The Premier League is back. Excitement is building as fans get to see some of their new signings in action for the very first time. It's been an incredible window so far, and it just keeps on getting better and better. Nottingham Forest ramp up their business as they try to bring in 4 new players. Coming up on today's show, Jadon Sancho is wanted by several clubs, but could Roma be his next destination? Eddie Howe is trying to strengthen his squad. We'll hear from the Newcastle boss at 9:30 this morning as they try to bring in Jacob Ramsey. Roma have made a permanent bid for Manchester United forward Jadon Sancho worth £20 million. United forward Rasmus Højlund is open to a move to AC Milan, according to our colleagues at Sky in Italy. 18-year-old centre-back Giovanni Leone will have a medical at Liverpool after a £26 million deal was agreed with Parma. And Chelsea have bought and sold well in this window, but there is still plenty of work to do. Enzo Maresca is coming up later for you this hour. Here we go then, the start of the new season. Has your team done enough in the market? So much to discuss today in the company of European football expert Andy Brassel and our reporter Mark McAdam. Let's get straight into Nottingham Forest though. They sprung into action yesterday with news of 4 potential incomings. Nuno Espirito Santo had told us that Forest had major problems heading into the new season, but he may be feeling slightly more optimistic now. Mark, tell us, what's going on?
Finally, Nottingham Forest fans can get excited about some signings because it has been a slow window. Of course, there has been that cloud hanging over the City ground with regards to what European competition they were going to be playing in. Now that that's been confirmed and sorted, and obviously financially that makes a big difference as well. Playing in the Europa League means there'll be a lot more income there for the accountants, which enables them to spend a little bit more in the window. And of course, players want to know what type of European football they're going to be playing. 4 potentially huge signings for Nuno Espirito Santo, who has been frustrated, like you rightly say. Let's go through them nice and quick now. So James McAtee, obviously at Manchester City. We know there's a deal agreed there that could be worth up to £30 million for him. There is also a buyback and sell-on clause inserted into that deal. So that is a midfielder in for Nuno. Amari Hutchinson, 21-year-old. Really impressive, I think, last season for Ipswich Town. Former Chelsea and Arsenal academy man. There is advanced talks happening over a deal worth £37.5 million with Ipswich at the moment. Couple of assists and 3 goals in the Premier League last season. He did actually have a release clause at £35 million that expired. So no one could get the deal done in time. So this is more than the release clause. We're expecting some movement on this one today. We also know that Brentford were interested in Hutchinson earlier on in the window as well. Third player, Douglas Luiz. Aston Villa fans will know him well. They actually didn't really want to sell him when he went to Juventus, but they had to do something to just oscillate their PSR position and make sure they were compliant. He was a player they didn't want to lose. Effectively hasn't really worked out since moving to Turin. We know that Forest have approached Juventus over a potential deal. There are actually 2 Premier League sides that have lodged bids with Juventus, and both are being considered at the moment. We understand Forest to be one of those. And the 4th and final player, Arnaud Calimundo. Have I said that correctly? Calimundo. See, that's why Andy's here. That's why he's next to me.
Thanks and good night.
Striker, 23 years old. Forest currently in talks with Rennes. RB Leipzig and Villarreal also were interested at one stage this summer. Former PSG academy player as well. 40 goals, 14 assists in 112 appearances at Rennes. So he knows where the back of the net is. So, yeah, you can see things starting to fall into place for Forest now.
Andy, let's start with Douglas Luiz, because Mark said there things haven't quite worked out in Turin. Why could he be heading back to the Premier League after just one season at Juventus?
Well, they really spent a lot on getting him over, not just in terms of money, but in terms of collateral. They couldn't afford the fee outright, so they had to send a couple of players in the other direction, of course. But it started badly for Douglas Luiz, and then it just got progressively worse. And really, from January onwards, they've been trying pretty hard to get rid of him. Now, the fact that that's not a secret has made it difficult for them to get decent value for him. So that's why this has always been a deal that's really going to happen in the second half of the window. Obviously, he still has great cachet in the Premier League, so he's clearly going to come back there. But it's just about Juventus really minimising their loss. That's what it has been about. I think amongst these signings, Calimundo is the really interesting one for me, because, as you said, we know what Douglas Luiz can do. If they can get him back to Villa form, then we know Forest have got a heck of a player there. Calimundo, I guess a lot of people won't be familiar with. He in my opinion, was good enough to be a squad player at PSG, even in the Galactico era. Great movement, great finisher with both feet. Scored a decent amount of goals for a really quite poor Rennes team last season because they were in a bit of a state until Habib Bey steered them away from the bottom, the former Newcastle and Hull defender, when he took over. So I think when you're looking at a player who can probably get you 15 Premier League goals and you're spending 30 million or maybe a touch under, I think you look at some of the other fees, that represents really terrific value, especially when you consider that he's only 23 years old and there's a ceiling there.
It really does jump off the page when you look at his record at Rennes last season, scored 17 goals. You said there he could get 15 goals in the Premier League this season. And when you look at the fees, there's a number of strikers that went for much more than that, who don't have that pedigree in terms of scoring it in the top division. Could he come in then and compete with Chris Wood?
Yeah, well, I think you're talking about someone who will complement Chris Wood. I mean, obviously he gives Forest the ability to play a bit differently. He's a very, very different profile of striker. It's about movement with him. He can score headers, but he won't be eating them up like Chris Wood. That's for sure. He's about getting in behind defenders, really. So it gives them a different option. They could play them together, or they could vary it depending on whether they want to play one or the other. So it's a terrific option for Nuno, and as we said, at a very good price.
OK, let's get to Brentford then. It's been a difficult summer for the club when it comes to departures in terms of players and coaching staff. But late last night, they reached an agreement in principle with Bournemouth to sign Dango Ouattara. Mark, finally some good news for Brentford fans. It's an expensive deal. Tell us the details.
Yeah, this was confirmed late last night, and it was one of those things that we knew was in the offing, and negotiations had been going on for a number of days, quite intensely after Brentford's initial approach. The deal is going to be worth up to £42 million for the 23-year-old. I think one of the problems for Bournemouth is that the player had actually said to him, look, I want to explore my options, I want to move on, I feel like the time is now right for me to have a new challenge. So for them, they didn't necessarily want to sell someone who was a part of their first team squad. He was a key member last season, and I think one of the big things that Keith Andrews would have liked about Dango Ouattara is his versatility. He played as a false nine when Evanilson was injured. He can play on the left, on the right. He's played as a 10. He's also played at left back as well, and he's got that pace and energy and strength, so he can adapt to multiple roles. But clearly, he felt like he wanted a new challenge. Bournemouth had been in negotiations. The deal had been struck. One of the provisos was that Bournemouth wanted to try and get someone in as a replacement before allowing him to go. It feels like they're getting closer to getting that player in, which we understand to be by Leverkusen's Amin Adli. So therefore, they allowed Dango to go. Trained yesterday with the Bournemouth team, but isn't likely to be involved, obviously, with the match tonight against Liverpool. So we'd imagine his Brentford medical to happen at some stage in the next 24 to 48 hours. But clearly a good piece of positive news for Keith Andrews, who's seen that Brentford squad decimated. And you can see why they want Dango. Data really stacks up. We know that Brentford's recruitment is very data-driven. They like to look at the metrics and the analytics of players and what they bring and what they give. And he certainly ticks a lot of boxes in that respect. I'm intrigued as to how he develops, because he came in from Lorient. Bournemouth spent £22 million on him. There was a big outlay there. He's been outstanding, and he's shown glimpses of what he could potentially be. If he can find that more consistent level, he could be a really big threat for Brentford.
And in terms of replacement for Dango, Mark mentioned that Adli looks like he's going to be the player they're going to target, while Leverkusen have lost a number of key players already this summer. On paper, his numbers aren't hugely impressive, but would this be a good move for Bournemouth? Yeah,
and I think when we're talking about a player who's got a higher level to hit, Amin Adli is definitely one of those. Very versatile as well, which in terms of replacing Dango, I think is probably quite important. We've seen him play as a false nine, a wide attacker. He's left-footed. He likes to come in from the right-hand side onto that left foot. And I think one of the key testaments to him, really trusted by Xabi Alonso. Xabi Alonso loved him. He's a sort of mobile forward that he likes, that can fill a number of positions. He actually chose him to play a couple of the big matches rather than his frontline strikers of Victor Boniface and Patrick Schick, who are both very consistent in terms of scoring goals. So, look, coaches love him. I think there's a lot more to get out of him as well. I think it'd be really, really interesting signing for Bournemouth.
Let's stay with Brentford then, because Keith Andrews confirmed yesterday that Johan Wissa will not be part of the squad for their Premier League opener against Nottingham Forest. The forward does remain of interest to Newcastle. Mark, are these two things linked? Could Dango's impending arrival at Brentford pave the way for Wissa to go to Newcastle?
If you speak to anyone at Newcastle, they'll say yes. You speak to anyone at Brentford, they'll say no. As far as Brentford are concerned, Dango Ouattara is the replacement for Brian Mbomo, not Johan Wissa. Whereas Newcastle fans will say, no, now they've got Dango, we can get Johan Wissa. We know that there is an interest there. There has been a rejected offer by Brentford from Newcastle for Johan Wissa. We know that he's going into the last year of his contract, although the club do hold an additional club option year. So essentially he's got 2 years left on his deal. We know he left the Portugal pre-season tour early. He's expressed his disappointment to the club about not being given the opportunity to play for a club in Newcastle where he wants to go. He's getting to the latter stages of his career. He's only 29. I don't want to age him too much, but he wants this opportunity to play at a huge club. He wants to play Champions League football, which Newcastle have, of course, this season. He's made it quite clear where he would like to go. But ultimately, Brentford's stance has been, A, we'll only sell you for the price that we're comfortable with. And what we feel is fair market value. And also, we don't want to lose a key player of our first team who was so instrumental to what we've done over the last few years. So there has been a lot of friction between the player and the hierarchy at the football club. Keith Andrews was talking about it, and you sense his frustration. As a former player himself, he'll understand it because he was in those moments where he got the opportunity to move and earn bigger money and play at different levels and for different sides. You'd imagine there will be a little bit more of a softening on Brentford's stance now that they've got someone through the door, but ultimately it's still going to be about getting the price that they want for a player who's important to them, key first team player. So yeah, let's wait and see how things develop. I'd imagine it would happen. Johan Wissa will probably be one of the final pieces of the Newcastle jigsaw. Not to say that that's their window complete, but he's certainly a big player there alongside Will Asula and Alexander Isak. So yeah, it just feels like it's moving into place.
OK, let's stay with Newcastle then, because it's been a challenging summer for the club, but they could be close to confirming a second major signing. In just the space of a few days, Jacob Ramsey arrived in Newcastle last night to complete a move from Aston Villa. Eddie Howe's news conference, by the way, is coming up for you at 9:30. Mark, can you confirm the details of this potential deal and why have Newcastle wanted to sign him? Because it's a player they've had an interest in for a really long period of time.
Like so much of Eddie Howe's recruitment, it's done long term. They don't just go into the market and say, we need a midfielder who's playing well at the moment. It's right, we've been tracking this guy for 3 or 4 years, 5 years. He feels like he's the right fit now for our squad. Andy Howe does a lot of the recruitment at Newcastle. He's the talent spotter. He's done so much good work over the course of this summer in negotiating deals, responsible for Livramento, Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, and he's very much involved with this one. They've been watching him for some time. He's signing a 5-year contract. The deal is worth 39 million with 4 million in add-ons, 43 million. Feels like sensible money for someone of his quality. He was into the last 2 years of his Villa contract. We know that they have to be conscious of their FFP requirements, so they had to sell players this summer to make sure they met with the European rules with regards to finance. He's a player that Eddie Howe has liked for some time, and he brings versatility. And that's one of the key things. I feel like we're speaking a lot now. Managers want players they can put in different positions. He can play as a left 8. He can play on the left-hand side. So he brings that option for Eddie Howe. Great character references, great lad, and he wanted Newcastle. There's been a few players that haven't really wanted Newcastle. He was someone that was desperate to get to the North East and play under Eddie Howe, and I think those boxes were all ticked.
And one player that wanted to join Newcastle and has joined Newcastle now is Malik Thiaw from AC Milan. They've got some good centre-backs there already at Newcastle. Is he an upgrade on what they have in that area?
I think he could be. And I think if you look back to the start of his Milan career, of course, he came through a good academy at Schalke, being thrown in at the deep end when they were in a bit of a mess for his first team experiences. And then when he started out at Milan, he looked terrific. Slowed up a little bit over the last season, although there are a lot of players with a bigger name than him, like Theo Hernandez and Rafael Leao, who are well below their level last season. But I think what's most noteworthy is Max Allegri, the new Milan coach, wanted to keep him. Even though the club said to him in the end, look, we can make a huge profit here, he's going to have to go and we're going to have to use the money elsewhere. But Thiaw is at good age. He's got loads of experience for his age in 2 different leagues. Speaks brilliant English already. He's strong, absolute prince on the ball, never really gives it away and doesn't dive into tackles. Quite how he can maintain that in the Premier League, we'll wait and see because it's a slightly different pace, but it might take him a month or so to settle in. But I think they're in a good position because they're not so short that they have to put him in straight away. They can bleed him in gradually. But by the same token, Newcastle were really stretched in those positions at some point. They're not really wanting to get to that point where they were the last time they were in the Champions League, where the squad started looking really threadbare halfway through the season. That's what they want to avoid. And I think rather than improving the first team, obviously the Isak thing is a shadow over everything, but really what they want to do this season is this inter-season is have some sort of depth, especially with the Champions League being a little bit longer than the last time they were in it with 8 games instead of 6. They'll fancy their chances of at least getting to the playoff round, if not the last 16 straight away. So for Newcastle, they need to have a better squad than they had in a very long time, and that's what they've been edging towards ever since Mike Ashley went and the new regime came in.
Okay, well, they've got a better squad as well. I think, the narrative is Newcastle have had a terrible summer. I actually think their squad is better now than it was when they finished the season.
Well, maybe that question will be asked to Eddie Howe. He'll speak at his news conference in around 15 minutes' time. We'll bring that to you on Sky Sports News. Now, it's the start of the new Premier League season. There is so much excitement building and plenty of managers coming out throughout the day here on Sky Sports News. Next up, we'll discuss outgoings at Manchester United, and will Gianluigi Donnarumma be in the Premier League this season? We'll discuss that next. Hi there, welcome back. Let's focus on Manchester United now. Their focus right now is on outgoings. It looks like Jadon Sancho's exit from the club is getting closer. Roma have made an offer to sign the forward for around £20 million. Surely, Mark, this would be something that will tempt Manchester United.
Well, he's one of the players that Manchester United want to sell. He's into the last year of his contract. He's on massive wages as well, so that's another drain on the club system, particularly when they're conscious of PSR. So therefore, you'd imagine this is the type of offer that will get Manchester United to the table. They know they're going to have to take a hit on what they paid Borussia Dortmund for him, around £73 million. So, it was a big deal back then. Safe to say this hasn't really worked out. Roma offering, like you say, £20 million. But getting him off the wage bill is probably worth another £15 to £20 million this year as well. So it could be a deal that happens. We know that Borussia Dortmund were also interested in taking him, but as of yet, there's been no formal offer to Manchester United. I get the feeling this one might happen. Players open to moving to Serie A. He's had some good experiences in the Bundesliga. Didn't work out at Chelsea last season. It feels like it's only a matter of time now before Jadon Sancho is no longer a Manchester United player. And
Sancho not the only United player that they're hoping to move on in this window. The other being Rasmus Højlund. Mark, he said, and he has said over the course of the summer, that he wants to stay and fight for his place at Manchester United, but it feels like his stance may have just shifted now.
Yeah, this was news that came out whilst we were on air yesterday, actually, from our colleague Sky in Italy, who said that AC Milan had positive contact with his representatives, and whilst his stance had been, I want to stay at Manchester United, I want to earn my place in that team, and I want to prove to the Old Trafford fans I am one of the best strikers I can possibly be. It hasn't worked out, but now the stance is softening. The minutes have not been as frequent in pre-season as he would have hoped for, and I'm presuming at some stage Ruben Amorim has said, look, Rasmus, thanks so much, but you're not going to get game time. Benjamin Sesko is our number 1 striker. You might be coming off the bench, if at all. So actually, my best advice is go and play, go and develop. You had a really successful spell in Serie A at Atalanta before you joined us. Go back there, continue to prove yourself, continue to score goals, continue to develop. So it feels like now that stance for the player has probably changed, knowing that his days at Manchester United are over. There's all sorts of discussions happening with regards to permanent loans with options and obligations. But again, he's another one that feels like he's edging towards the exit at the Theatre of Dreams.
And are you expecting Benjamin Sesko to be a significant upgrade on Rasmus Højlund?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's shown consistently over the last 2 seasons that he can lead the line and score goals in the Bundesliga. And I guess this is the point. Look, Man United really need this signing to work. There is no other option than it works for them, because they've spent a lot on him. He's taken a bit of leap of faith in joining them as well. And he's kind of trusted them with his future, because he said, I trust you to make me into one of the best strikers or help me become one of the best strikers in the world. United have not been brilliant at developing players, at helping them find that extra level in recent years. So there's, I think, a leap of faith for both player and club. I mean, what we've seen with Sesko, and of course, because he came through Salzburg, he was compared a lot to Erling Haaland. They're similar physically. They're big guys who've got a turn of pace that you wouldn't expect to look at them. But they're very different sort of players. Like, Sesko never really hinted at being the sort of goal scorer, the sort of fox in the box, the extraordinaire that Haaland was. But Haaland never really had his all-round game, which has improved actually while he's been in Germany. Now, I've been quite surprised by the amount of goals that he has scored in Germany, even though he had a couple of little droughts which brought his overall total down last season. He's still got nigh on 20 goals in all competitions for both of those seasons. I think it is a question of how much United can develop him. I think, unfortunately, Rasmus Højlund has been... I think he was bought too soon, a little bit like Joshua Zirkzee, and really, I guess... Šeško is that little bit further down the line, but by the same token, you're looking at a little bit like when Alexander Isak arrived in the Premier League. There's someone who's already proven at the top level, but can hit that next level. And that's the aim for Šeško, isn't it? To become one of the absolute best in the Premier League, which he's got the ability to do. It's just, is United the right place for him to do it? A lot on it for both of them.
OK, let's wait to see if Hojlund gets that move to AC Milan. Let's get to our first Premier League manager of the morning. Brighton's Carlos Baleba has been the subject of interest from Manchester United this summer. Can Brighton keep hold of him? Here's the thoughts of their boss, Fabian Hürzeler.
Bit of news about Carlos Baleba and his future at the club. From what you know, how confident are you that he will be a Brighton player come the end of the window?
Very, very, very confident.
Yeah?
Yes.
Any particular reason why?
Just my belief.
Okay. How has he been over the last few weeks? Obviously, he's picked up this knee injury. So, firstly, is he in line to play tomorrow? But also, how has he been dealing with this? He's just 21 years old. There is a lot of noise. How's his state of mind as well as his physical fitness?
I didn't see any change. He only changed his hairs, so I think that was the only change he made the last 2 weeks. But overall, he seems to be in a really good place. He's enjoying it with his teammates. He's enjoying it being a Brighton player. He's very grateful to have the process he had in the last season. So I didn't see any big change, and he's an option to start for tomorrow. Yes.
So Fabian Hürzeler said he's confident that Carlos Baleba will stay at Brighton. Mark, it does feel like it's going to be a very, very tough deal for Manchester United to do. Would you expect him to remain a Brighton player following the 1st of September?
I would say he's probably going to be a Brighton player, 99.999999%. I think that the chance of Manchester United signing him are quite slim. We know that Brighton drive a hard bargain and they don't let players go on the cheap. And they've invested a lot of money as well. He's not like one of these players that's come in for £4 or £5 million and then that they can sell for a huge profit. They invested, £25 million when they signed him from Lille a couple of years ago. And of course, at the moment, there's been no club-to-club talk. All of the noise has come out of the media, really, and from the Manchester United end. So I would be absolutely gobsmacked, unless it was an astronomical offer that Brighton simply couldn't turn down, that he wasn't still down on the south coast on September the 2nd.
OK, plenty more to come from Fabian. Out for our transfer update. Roma have made a permanent bid for Manchester United forward Jadon Sancho, worth £20 million. United forward Rasmus Højlund is open to a move to AC Milan, according to our colleagues at Sky in Italy. 18-year-old centre-back Giovanni Leone will have a medical at Liverpool after a £26 million deal was agreed with Parma. Jacob Ramsey has landed in the northeast to finalise his potential £43 million move to Newcastle United from Aston Villa. Roma have opened talks over the signing of Leon Bailey from Villa. Nottingham Forest are ramping things up. They've had bids accepted for Amari Hutchinson and James McAtee and have approached Juventus to sign Douglas Luiz and Rennes Arnaud Kalimiondu. And Johan Wissa will not be part of the Brentford squad for their Premier League opener against Forest on Sunday. Wissa has made it clear he wants to leave the club to join Newcastle. Now, we promised you the thoughts of Newcastle manager Eddie Howe. Here he is now.
I know you've spoken at length in recent weeks about Alexander Isak and his situation. As we talk now, what is the latest with him, and has anything changed this week?
No, there's been no change to the situation. All my focus has been on the training, on Aston Villa, on the transfer front in terms of trying to get players in. And you can imagine that is all-consuming for me. So Alex's situation's been unchanged for a while, and that will continue to be the case, I think.
You've enjoyed a good relationship with him, haven't you, over the 3 years that he's been a Newcastle United player? Given everything that's going on and the difficulties associated with it, do you feel that good understanding is still intact?
Yeah, I've had a great relationship with Alex. I think you need to have that partnership with every player. I take my part of that relationship really, really importantly. I think in the respect that I have to work really closely with the player to his benefit, to try and improve them, to try and help them, to try and educate them, sometimes console them. You know, there's so many different emotions that players go through, and I always want to be there for them in every way. And me and Alex have enjoyed a great relationship. I don't think he'd have done as well as he's done without that, and without his teammates, and without the supporters and the backing of the whole football club. So he recognises that as well. He's a highly intelligent person, and he knows he wouldn't have had the success here without everybody connected with Newcastle. So this is a different moment for him and for us. and we're working through that together.
Last question from me. To what extent do you feel this has had an impact on the other players in their preparations because they know they're not going to be playing alongside one of the best strikers around and somebody who's been a great teammate for them over the last few seasons?
Certainly early pre-season, I haven't shied away from the fact that was a difficult period for the players, for us, because any change is always difficult to react to. And I think you could see a bit of in some of our early pre-season performances. But I think the players are really strong mentally. They're a really tight group. They've really come together in the latter stages of pre-season. The mood's been good, the spirit's been good, the performances have been better. So although it's not ideal, and we know that, I think the group's reacted really well.
Do you think with what's going on with Alex, and you mentioned a moment ago that the players sort of earlier in the pre-season were affected, do you think in some ways it's maybe brought the rest of the squad closer together?
I think sometimes these things can have that effect. I think we were really, really close anyway. I don't know if I could necessarily sit here and look you in the eye and say it's brought us closer together, but I do think sometimes these things can happen and it can unify you in a way that you didn't know possible. Certainly I think the resolve and the strength of the group is there. They realise that without Alex, everyone's going to have to step up and give more in order for us to get results, because it's not an ideal situation. So I think that's the focus, and that's what we're planning to do.
Have you tried? Have you asked him if he would play tomorrow?
I think those conversations, I mean, of course, I said many times during this summer I want him to play, want him to train, and of course I've had those conversations with him, but I think the details of those conversations need to remain private.
And the Isak situation aside, kind of quietly in the background it feels as though the club are going about their work well. We've seen a number of new players arrive. You mentioned Malik there, and of course Jacob Ramsey here having a medical as well. Are you pleased with the rest of the work that's going on, if you can park the Isak situation? I know that's difficult.
Yeah, I am really pleased. I think it's been a slow burner this summer for us. Initially, a lot of frustration because we were trying to be active very early, as I said at the end of last season. The reality of that didn't happen, and that can sometimes be through no one's fault other than circumstance. Then you're trying to turn things in a positive way, not necessarily for you guys, your perception, but for the players internally, for the squad, for what we need. And I think gradually, piece by piece, we've been becoming stronger. It's all about, always for me, about the quality of the player rather than the number coming in. I say that continually, and I feel we've hit that in the right way. I think we've got quality players coming in, players that can make a difference, of the right age profile to take the squad forward into what will be a very challenging season. Yes, the top end of the pitch isn't ideal at the moment, but we've got a little bit of time on that still.
On Ramsey, I know you won't want to jinx it because it's not done yet, but he's the sort of guy I think that fits into your ethos here and everything you're trying to do.
I think you're right. You don't want to talk about it too early, Keith.
I've given you an idea. Is there any chance of him being involved tomorrow if you get the deal done?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Cheers, Keith. We've got Andy.
Well, Eddie,
Morning.
can you even begin to give us any insight into just how busy you've been this summer? Like how many phone calls you've been taking a day, anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's just been a constant there in my life during the summer. So whether you're, I think I spoke to Craig a couple of years ago, whether you're on a water park slide, playing tennis with your kids, whatever you're doing, you're sort of, there's something happening, where's my phone, right, okay. And it's that kind of, then you're off, then you're back. But you get used to that sort of, and it'll be the same for every manager, not for me. You get used to that life where you're sort of, there's a distraction, there's a moment where you have to go away and then you can come back in again, and it's trying to focus on the people that you're with and not disrespect them, I think is important. But I think it's been that kind of summer for me where there's just been no lull in activity. There's always been something happening.
OK, much more throughout the day from Eddie Howe on Sky Sports News. He says there is no change when it comes to Alexander Isak's situation at Newcastle, and he says that will continue to be the case. Mark, just remind us what the current situation is and what happens next.
What happens next, I can't predict. It certainly feels like with every day that progresses towards deadline day and Alexander Isak is still at Newcastle, it feels like he'll remain at Newcastle, because the chances of Newcastle trying to find a replacement is very difficult, because, as Andy knows, the top-end Champions League ready strikers are not really available. There's maybe one or two more that could be out there, but big question marks. We know that initial offer from Liverpool was rejected. There's been no second offer or further dialogue between the two football clubs. Their stance is, whilst they like Alexander Isak, they're not going to go back in until they get some sort of encouragement that there is a deal to be done. We know that Newcastle don't want to sell him. They value him at £150 million. So therefore, you'd have to say right now, it's just as we were, and as Eddie said, things unchanged at the moment, and the likelihood of him leaving, it feels like diminishes with every day that passes.
OK, let's get to one of the other big stories developing in Europe right now. Manchester City want Ederson to stay at the club and remain their number one, with Gianluigi Donnarumma only on their shortlist for now. Andy, what have you made of the situation, and where do you think he'll end up? And also, how bad is he with his feet, which everybody keeps saying?
Well, look, I think as we've been talking about Newcastle, if we're talking about Gigi Donnarumma with his feet, we should be talking about that Champions League battering that they got at St James's Park back when Luis Enrique was still playing 4-4-2, which really undermined them on a big Champions League night. Now, look, I think the narrative about Donnarumma has got a bit twisted along the way because he was simply so great in the second half of their Champions League campaign. He saved them at big moments against Aston Villa, against Arsenal, on the way to Munich, where they were so brilliant in the final, and he didn't have to do much at all, of course. But really, he's never been... We know he's an exquisite shot stopper. He has never been Luis Enrique's type of goalkeeper. He wants someone who's better with his feet. And funnily enough, the best goalkeeper before they bought Lucas Chevalier in the last week that they had on the books was their third choice goalkeeper, Arna Tenas, who they brought over from Spanish football when Luis Enrique first initially arrived. I mean, he could play in midfield for most Ligue 1 teams. He's so comfy on the ball. So that's something that Luis Enrique has looked to change. He needed to change that. And he's been quite cold and unemotional about it. And I think he's needed to be. You know, they want PSG to develop. The other thing with Donnarumma is kind of a hangover from this superstar era, both in terms of the wages he wants to renew and in terms of the fact that they've moved on from these big names like Mbappe and Neymar and Messi. So he belongs to an old era of PSG, really. We know he's an unbelievable shot stopper. Does he really suit Premier League football? I think is the question, because he likes to stay on his line and he's not ideal behind a defence that plays high up. That doesn't mean a Premier League team won't buy him, of course, because that's where the money is, to meet those sort of wage expectations or get nearer to those age expectations. I love to see how he'd do in the Premier League.
OK, we wait to see if he ends up in the Premier League. After the break, Thomas Frank discusses Tottenham's transfer business. Will they make a bid for Eberechi Eze? We'll tell you next. Hi there, welcome back. Tottenham have spent the least of any of the so-called Big Six clubs, but have been linked with moves for Crystal Palace's Eberechi Eze and Manchester City's Savinho. And Spurs boss Thomas Frank has confirmed they're in the market for a number 10. Let's hear from him now.
In many ways, I'm very happy with the squad. I think there's a lot of good players. I think we saw a team that was very, very, very competitive. And on any other day, we would have beaten the best team in Europe. Of course, we want as strong and competitive squad as possible. I know that Daniel, Johan and Vina are working night and day. And they have, by the way, been working night and day the last, 6, 7, 8 weeks. And they definitely would like to do deals early. Sometimes I think we need to understand it's not that easy. But they're working.
Eberechi Eze is a good player, and you might need a number 10 because obviously James Maddison is injured. Just tell us what kind of player you are looking for, and would someone like an Eze be that kind of player?
As I said, we are looking, of course, in the market, not only for 10 positions, but just to see if we can strengthen the squad. And the players we're looking is the only players we think can improve the squad. And I think that's the right thing we want to do. If we can pick the right player and it fits, then we'll do something.
OK, more from Thomas Frank throughout the day on Sky Sports News. But right now, we're going to have a look at some players that you may think Premier League clubs should be looking at signing. Andy, let's start with PSG's Bradley Barcola, who started in the Super Cup win over Tottenham on Wednesday.
I think this is a very, very difficult deal to do, but you can understand why there's Premier League interest. Still only 22, of course, going to turn 23 in September. his pace and his altruism for a forward of that age, his ability to create for others. He did that for Lacazette at Lyon. Then when he went to PSG, he did that for Kylian Mbappe as well. Now, he started last season really as more of a goal scorer. Things changed when Kvisha Kvaratskhelia came on, when Desiree Doué became part of that front three. So there's a sense that his position in the hierarchy has changed, and that has encouraged Premier League teams to have a go. PSG still want to extend his contract, so a difficult deal to do, but Premier League clubs would be daft not to ask, wouldn't they?
There'll be a few clubs looking at him surely over the next few days, wouldn't they?
Yeah, he's the type of profile that Premier League sides like. They want people that are a bit younger, who they can develop, mould, buy low, sell high. And he's clearly got that ability that Andy's mentioned there. And I think he could be the type of player that has the right profile for the Premier League. So maybe not this summer, but you can imagine at some stage there will be those conversations that are being had. OK,
let's stay in Ligue 1. And you've also picked out Lyon winger Malik Fofana. Why do you think he would be a good fit for English football?
He's so fast. He is so fast. And I think when people talk about Belgium not having the players to replenish their stocks from the golden generation, come on, look at this guy. He's the exception that proves the rule, I think. Someone who came over to Lyon when he was only 18, they spent a decent chunk of change on him. But if they sold him tomorrow, they could make a massive profit. They know there's a lot of interest in the Premier League. He's clocked as the fastest player in Ligue 1 last season. Good on either wing, better on the left, adding goals to his game, very, very composed. Really good vision in bringing others into play as well. He's good now, and I reckon in 2 years you're looking at one of the best wide players in Europe.
And in terms of somebody who could maybe be one of the best strikers in Europe in a couple of years' time, let's get to Portugal. Porto striker Samu, very close to joining Chelsea last summer. Is he ready to come to the Premier League now?
He absolutely is. And I think he was last summer, to be honest, James. And it was really surprising to Atletico Madrid how that deal sort of fell apart. But I think Porto did really well to get in there. They bought half of his economic rights, one of the first signings they made with André Villas-Boas as the president. He was brilliant last season. He started this season really, really well. 2 goals in the first league game. And the sort of goals he scores makes you wonder, why isn't every club in the Premier League all over him? You can't really say sure thing in terms of the Premier League, but at just 21, he's someone who's absolutely impossible to stop in the air. He's got great instinct in the 6-yard box. He's improving his all-round game. This is someone with a huge, huge upside.
He's got a big release clause. That's where the stumbling block is. There is Premier League interest, but the big release clause makes it difficult. So clubs would have to go to Porto and say, let's have a conversation. We know there's the release clause in place. However, we can't quite get there, but...
No one's getting there.
Yeah.
No.
So therefore, that makes it a tricky deal to make happen. But there is definite, firm Premier League interest.
And bear in mind, the only player to score more goals than him in Portugal last season, Victor Gyökeres.
And we know where he's gone. Now, right, Samu's Porto teammate Diogo Costa has consistently been linked with a move away from the club. Are you surprised he's still in Portugal? Because we've spoken about him over a number of different transfer windows.
A little bit, James, but I think there are 2 issues here. Firstly, the fact that, again, he's got an absolutely huge release clause, 80 million euros. The other thing is, goalkeepers are perpetually undervalued in the market, aren't they? It's really difficult to shift goalkeepers for big fees, as we're seeing with Gigi Donnarumma at the moment, even though he's only got a year left on his contract. Look, what I like most about Diogo Costa, if we're looking at someone who's good with his feet, he's up there. He's someone who wants to come off his line and take control, which immediately lends him to the Premier League, where you don't want someone who's a shrinking violet in the penalty box. He's someone who saves up to 40% of the penalties that he faces, which is pretty amazing. So we know he's a great shot stopper as well. But I guess that is the thing, that no one's been prepared to go all the way. We talked about the release clauses in Portugal being perpetually high and just a negotiating position. Porto want most of it. They know how good he is, and he's a real leader as well.
OK, finally, Belgian striker Lois Openda has already seen his former RB Leipzig teammate Benjamin Sesko head to Manchester United. For him personally, he'll be thinking, maybe I want to move as well.
Yeah, I think he is thinking that. And I think in terms of goals, he's more of a guarantee than Šeško. Scored a lot of goals to get Lens to within a point of winning the title a couple of seasons ago in France, which is obviously a huge achievement. A great movement, super intelligent, great playing in a 1-2 touch team, and a terrific finisher with both feet. So a very different sort of striker to his old teammate Šeško. There are a lot of teams who should be looking at him. RB Leipzig, they paid 50 million euros for him, a fee of up to 50 million euros. If you were paying 50 million pounds for him, I think that would be very, very acceptable. OK, thank you very much. We'll be back with Mark McAdam and Andy Brassel later on at 12 o'clock for Transfer Talk. We talk about some of the players that have already moved to the Premier League. They like Diakite, Frimpong and Florian Wirtz, who will be in action tonight. Liverpool taking on Bournemouth at the start of the new Premier League season, the biggest ever Premier League season here on Sky Sports. That gets underway from 8 p.m. But up next is the Sky Sports fan club, Tom White and Charlie Austin. They'll be discussing everything
you need to know ahead of the start of the new Premier League season. And throughout the day, we're hearing from every single Premier League manager as the new campaign gets underway. Stay with us on Sky Sports News.